Fitch, and that is obviously my email address if anybody after the fact has questions or just in general. Obviously, some of the things I do besides running my own businesses is I'm a mentor at Hatch, the Business Accelerator Program, and then for Start Norfolk. The first two I was a mentor, and then judging. So feel free to contact me, and I think we have a little bit more people right now, but that's okay. So how many of you, Tracy, are you the only one in the room I think that's that pitched Friday night? Anybody else in here pitched Friday night? That's right, you get brownie points. You're the only one here right now. Thank you.
I'm pitching today too.
I know, that's what I meant, yeah, I know. Okay, so Ziggity Zoom. So the first thing obviously is, who are we? So Ziggity Zoom is a multimedia tech company, and we focus on kids and family content. Okay, and we basically play in two sandboxes. The first is fun and games, whether it be online or whether it be in a mobile application or otherwise. The second space is creative learning or education. Mostly it is pre-K is our focus, but we go up to about age 8 now. And at some point we definitely like to go further than that, but for right now that's kind of our core focus. Okay. And so we've, like I said, we kind of play in several sandboxes or playgrounds. One is online, and we have sort of a suite of websites, but our primary and really our anchor site is ziggityzoom.com, and it's geared towards young families and then teachers as well. And just to give you, I mean, it's only a metric, obviously it doesn't equate to success, but since we started tracking it with Google Analytics, which was in about 2009, we've had just over 5 million people to the site and about 22 million page views, just to put it in context, okay?
What year again?
Well, we started our company in middle of 2008, but that data is from 2009 till, I guess, a month or so ago. And then the next playground that we play in is the mobile space. Mostly we focused on Apple, the iOS products. We have rolled out an app on the Nook, and obviously at some point we do plan to get into Android space, but we have not, quite gotten there yet. These are some of the apps that we've rolled out. Actually, these are primarily the apps we've rolled out so far. The first 5 are actually they are preschool spelling apps. They are going to be put into a suite called Word Animals. So we created each one so it was chunk by chunk, but the end game was so that you could play any one of those spelling apps because they're complementary as one application. So we're still working on putting it in that sort of packaging. And then Roho is a family word game. It's geared obviously towards adults, but anybody that can spell words can play the game. And then Feed the Monster is a 3D novelty fun game. And we partnered with a company in Nova Scotia, a big animation house up there, to do that app. Okay. And then another playground that we play in is ebooks and e-learning. So yes, we've tried ebooks on Kindle and other things like that, but where we're having real success is that we're actually a publisher partner with Barnes & Noble, and you have to be an established publisher in some realm, and you have to be able to deliver more than 25 books. So we're in a very specific program for that. So we're having very strong success with ebooks. We have about 30 to 35 books with them currently. And those are mostly all for kids under the age of 6. We have a couple other books that don't fit in that category, but that's generally our strongest area. As far as e-learning, one area that's a newer area for us, but we launched several years ago a site called National Kindergarten Readiness. And the purpose of that site is to both promote to parents and to even preschool teachers the need for all of our children to be ready, for school readiness. And so we're trying to provide them with resources. And so that's what the site does now. Long term, we're working on a web and a mobile platform that would basically be a kindergarten readiness assessment/game center, so that kids would play games, but it would give parents and teachers unique reporting that they could actually align with sort of the national standards and kind of know now what do the kids need to work on. So we've started on many of the mini games within it, but we haven't created the entire product. And that is an area that, because we are small and we're doing it ourselves, which we'll talk about, we have kind of had to put it a little bit on the back burner because we're doing other things. So we either have to find a partner to kind of move it forward more quickly, or we'll just have to kind of get to it as we're able to. Okay, Roho, I mentioned that's our word game. It rolled out in November. And what's interesting about Roho is the people that are playing it. So first of all, it's geared not towards word addicts, if you will, people that are just thesauruses, if you will. So even people, whether you're somebody that likes board games or not, anybody, I mean, people find that they get really addicted to it quickly. So it's a very simple game. I mean, there's a lot of logic behind it, but the look of it and the playability of it is very simple. I mean, literally my 6-year-old can play it, he can barely spell. But he can't spell a lot of words on it, but he can do it. So literally, right when we released it, I mean, in November, we had people literally saying, like, it blows away Words with Friends, and they were just addicted. We had other people saying over Thanksgiving weekend, right when Angry Birds Star Wars came out, you know, hey, this is getting more playtime than Angry Birds Star Wars, which I'm not saying everyone's saying that. My point was like, really, wow, that's pretty amazing that anyone said that. So anyway, we have big hopes for this down the road. But one thing, if you're in the mobile space, you probably know this, or if you're considering it, it's obviously highly competitive. It's a very saturated market. So we are in the mobile space for the long run. We know that in the short term, we're not going to make any money there. Okay, and we may have 7 apps that don't make much money and only one that becomes a big success, right? But it's a long-term play for us. It's not, we're not in it to think, oh, we're going to make tons of revenue in the first day or week or month or year. You know, so in that space, you really aren't going to have an overnight success. And we get that, and we're okay with that. So Feed the Monster, that's the 3D iPhone and iPad game that came out. Like I said, it was a partnership. And 2 of the things that I wanted to point out with this is anybody can make anything happen. People complain all the time, we'll talk about this more later, about money. Well, I don't have the money. I don't know where to start. If you're creative, anything's possible. With this deal, I didn't pay a cent. Okay? I mean, I won't get into all the details, obviously, of the deal, but the point is, if you're creative, there are always a way. You can find the right company, the right fit. If they have interest and they see the vision, you will find a way. Or sometimes you might have to pay money, but never the amount they tell you have to pay, because there's always ways to negotiate things. But a lot of people, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people with ideas, and they often, they say money's the barrier. We don't have any money. No, it's not. We're self-funded. Money's always a barrier for us. No, it's not. We still get stuff done, always. Always new projects. So that's the first thing. And then, just to have to be creative, and you have to realize that money is not your barrier. You're usually your own barrier, or you're not thinking creatively enough. Okay, this is just a quick story. So one thing, I think, whether you work for a company, whether you're starting a company, it doesn't matter your position. You have to be memorable and you have to be bold. I was at the licensing show in New York several years back, and we had a booth. We were showing art at the time because I was doing licensing of characters, TV concepts, art. But we were a small firm. We didn't have lots of successes other than in the art area, but not in entertainment. So I was meeting with one of the top 5 people of a company called 4Kids Entertainment. They've had tons of huge properties, from Pokemon, Cabbage Patch. I mean, they've just kind of managed and run all these huge brands, tons and tons of money. So I met with the gentleman, and it went well. He had no interest in our tiny properties, but he was very polite. Well, so that was maybe on Thursday. That next Monday, I got a call from that company, from the HR department, and the gentleman had told his HR department, try to hire her, bring her up. Well, at the time, I had 2 kids and a husband, and so I said, well, is this something where you could even consider teleworking? And she said no, and I said, okay, well, then it's not really an option. Well, in hindsight, I wish I had said, okay, I'll come up and interview. I should have seen really what the deal was. But the point was, I obviously was memorable because I did something right during that presentation. He was bold because he didn't know that I would ever leave what I was doing to come and work for him. It didn't matter. He said, I like what I saw, I'm going to try to bring it on, right? So I think the point is, whether you're hiring people, whether you're looking for the next thing, if you're memorable, you're going to get response. And if you're bold in your decisions as a business owner or a manager, it's going to make all the difference, and you potentially winning whatever it is you're trying to go after. So your team. Obviously, people are the most important thing. There's no question about it. I have sort of this back scenario in my head as I meet people. It's like I literally collect in my mind the best people out of any industry that I meet, and I'm like, I'm going to work with that group of people somehow in this Norfolk area in the next 5 years. They don't all know that. Some of them I've shared that with them. But the point is, people are invaluable. I mean, you have to find the best, in whatever their genius is, and you need to work with those people. Even if you don't know how, find a way. I mean, find a way to connect with them. So obviously, you want to surround yourself with others that have passion, great work ethic, drive, and they're genius in some way. And I don't mean they're outwardly genius, right? I mean, maybe they're an artist and they can do something that you or no one else can do. I mean, so whatever their genius is, it doesn't mean that they have the highest IQ necessarily. The other thing I always tell people is you need to share a meal with someone you're considering, right? Either to bring on your team, become a potential partner, whatever it is. You know, and then I'm not the only one to say this. There's many people that have run really large companies that have the same sort of mentality, and it's this. I don't want to work with somebody that's an asshole, right? I mean, let's be honest. If you share a meal with somebody, I know how they now treat the server. I know how they treat I mean, I get it. I see how they are. They're a true person. That's what I want to know. Right? I'm not going to work with somebody that's a jerk to that, you know, whomever it is. I mean, I want to work with somebody that's a humble or thankful, or, I mean, they can be motivated, but they have to have some of these other qualities. And you really get to know somebody over a meal or a cup of coffee, but multiple times would even be better. So really, I think that that's important. If I ever hire somebody for a company, I absolutely would try to meet with them multiple times or grab a cup of coffee. Sometimes you can't do that, fine. Then I give them a project and see how we work together. But something, you need a little bit deeper opportunity to connect with them. Well, obviously the core of all of our businesses, whether you work for a large company like Cox or Dominion in the area, or whether it's your own company, businesses are built and they fail based on customers, customer loyalty, repeat business, and how you handle them. Okay, so obviously in this picture, that person was pretty ticked off when they left that restaurant. Well, two examples just of our company and how we've handled customers and customer service. So one of the things we have on our website are printables. Excuse me. Lots of coloring pages and printables for kids. Well, this one mom emailed us and she was irate. I went to print out your princess stickers from your website, and I didn't know that it was going to print the directions first and then the stickers. And it was her last piece of sticker paper. And her daughter was just having a fit and crying. And this lady was irate. I mean, unreasonably so, right? I mean, but still, we were like, wow, she's really upset. This isn't good. Well, we decided as a company to send her a whole package, a mailing thing of princess stuff. We didn't have to do that. We did that because we're trying to send her a message. Yeah, that sucked, and we can't fix right that minute that she wasn't going to run out and get sticker paper. But we could fix it by saying, you know what, we understand that that's not great, and we're going to fix the process so people know when they print it how it works better. So one, she told us a flaw in our system, but two, we wanted to make sure that she understood that we did take what she said seriously. Another example is our word game, Rojo. We have several users, a lot of users, but several that are very passionate about the game, and they love it, literally. They've given us good reviews, they've given us feedback. Well, when we released our most recent big update in February, we actually emailed the gentleman directly. We'd already been communicating with him, this one man, he's probably 70-ish, retired, and said, hey, we would love your feedback, what do you think? And he literally took the time to write a very long, very detailed, message back with all this feedback. And he said, look, I understand you're not gonna take all my comments and make these changes, but I used to actually be in development, all these areas, right? So the point is we're really building that relationship with them and getting an advocate, or enthusiast, if you will. So it's not like we're trying to do that we're doing it because we genuinely care, but you do that. That's what you have to do with customers, right? You have to build that trust and build that relationship. And so for any of you, like I said, whether it's corporate or whether it's yourself, you've got to put the customer first. You have to understand what it is that they want and need and make sure that you're satisfying them. Oh, sorry, real quick. And then obviously, just deliver more than asked of you always. There's many companies I know in here in this conference, like Tim Ryan with ARC4 and many others. It's like every time somebody responds to them, they make sure they immediately get right back. They're always trying to do things above and beyond, and that's what I would say. All of us should be striving for. Okay, so if you have your own company, and even if you don't, you know this because of project management things, you have to expect rejection, and you're gonna fail. Okay, and what I mean by that is basically with rejection, each rejection you get is one step closer to yes, right? Because it's going to take lots of rejection or no's before you get a yes, maybe from that first customer, or maybe to get to your 100th customer. That's okay. I'm sure you all have heard of Chicken Soup for the Soul, that brand of books, and Jack Canfield. Well, he had 130 rejections on his first manuscript for that book before he actually got it into a publisher's hand that agreed to move forward with him. Well, that book went on to sell over 8 million copies, and then it's since launched over 80, maybe now it's 100 Chicken Soup for the Soul books. Okay, so 130 rejections from publishers, and his agent tried to get rid of them. Actually, his agent did. He said, I can't sell this after 30 rejections. He said, I'm gonna drop it. So then he had to himself, he and the co-writer, had to go in on their own and keep knocking on doors. But the point is, if you believe in it enough, you have to keep moving forward on it. Maybe you have to try different angles, right? Different ways about it, but you have to keep moving forward. And then the next thing is failure. We're all gonna fail, whether it's just a step, maybe we make a bad business decision and spend money that we could have otherwise avoided spending. So with failure, the point is fail early and fail in small increments, right? So in other words, it's a lot cheaper on the pocketbook and we're gonna still be viable if we only fail below $100 or $500 or $1,000, not $50,000, right? And then the thing is, if you fail in small increments and you're aware of it, hopefully you can fix, change course of it and then, actually innovate to make things better. So it's okay to fail. We all will fail, whether it's on some small project or whether it's on a large scale, but we need to try to recognize it early and then change course. Oh, I was like, okay, I don't know about you, but I definitely need a fire under my butt to get moving. Okay, so the thing is a lot of times in the entrepreneurial community, startup community, I literally will see the same company or person 6 months or a year after they've appeared at the first kind of event, and not a lot's happened. I mean, some of them, of course, stuff's happened, but a lot of them, they're still talking about it. Well, action is what we need, right? In any job, but especially in the startup community. You can't just talk about it. You can't say, well, I'm still trying to find a developer 6 months later. No, find a way today. Okay, act now. It is so important because whether you're trying to get funding or not, you've got to get things moving. It's much better to roll out version 1, even if it's, look, I want this great website, but we'll start with something that's tangible and little and then start testing pieces of it, right? We don't want everything. We really do just want the MVP, a minimally viable product. You just need the basics, okay? So be motivated and get off your butts and, the other thing I want to say is, a lot of companies wait until their product's out the door, fully out the door, before they get any customers. The problem with that is the longer you wait, the harder it can be to get traction, or you're really not being upfront and honest with yourself. Maybe really you can't sell it yet. You're supposed to be the founder. You have to be able to sell yourself the vision in the company or the product. If you wait 6 months, you now might have spent a lot of money and time and energy, and then you find you can't even sell it. You have to get the clients today, the customers today, all right? And then, like I said, get something released. I don't care if it's one feature. Fine, get it released and then get feedback, because when you get that feedback, you'll be able to change the course, right? Or improve it. Maybe you were wrong on the way you understood the need, okay? So a lot of, this is another potential issue that happens with startups, so we have to think a little differently, is a lot of people say, oh, I want to create an app, I want to create a mobile. Okay, well that's fine, but that's obviously a very saturated market. What's coming next, right? What's the new market on the horizon? Some people call them the maelstrom market. Some people say the red ocean, blue sea, or blue ocean's normal, the red ocean's kind of like the anomaly. So we're looking for what are the new markets? What's coming next, right? What are the things that, okay, we all know tablets and touch, there's all these things going on, so you need to think beyond that. It can still be a niche market, but it has to be for something coming up. The other issue I see a lot is people want to create business, they have a business idea, but you say, what's the revenue model? Well, I don't know, or it's just gonna be advertising. It's nothing wrong with advertising. People make a lot of money in that, but it's not, you really need to innovate beyond that, right? You need to think of, how can my revenue model be a little different, or how can I stretch it or apply it in a different way? So a lot of times people, the last thing they think of is the revenue model. And that's even true with big companies. A lot of companies fail because obviously they didn't pivot quick enough, right, with the new market, or they didn't see opportunities for revenue, right, in new ways. And then someone else comes and takes the money. I mean, entertainment's probably a good example of that, music. Oh, two other things that people look for. How scalable is it? So if any of you in here are looking at getting investment money, one thing obviously investors are looking for is how scalable is your idea, right? I mean, and it doesn't have to be a scalable idea to be $1 billion industry market, but if you're gonna get investment dollar, they wanna know how big is this gonna get. If you're just gonna start a company and you just wanna be a consultant, or you wanna just start a company and just support your yearly income, that's okay, it doesn't have to be that scalable. But if you're looking to do something different than that, build a business, right, and get investment, you're gonna have to know how scalable it is. And then you have to look for new distribution channels, okay? You can't just say, oh, well, I have this idea. I mean, if you put an app out there right now, Apple's search is horrible. You can't find it because there's too many apps. Guess what? Web still dominates. The web still does a better job if you do it right in getting found. I've been in all the markets, I'm playing in all those areas. I would highly recommend you do a website or a web platform before a mobile app. Guaranteed. Because you know, I mean, we've all know how to master those areas. I mean, even if you don't personally, there's lots of us that do. My point is, you start with one success, you can always roll it into other distribution channels. But also look for new distribution channels. So for instance, we do ebooks, but there's lots of people that are publishing, right, their e-magazines or other things. So keep looking for things where you can kind of make your way into a new distribution channel. Or maybe it's in retail stores. You're not going to get in Target, right, if maybe you're new or there's different things. So you have to think creatively or find a partnership with somebody that can get you in the door. So the point is, we do really have to think outside of that box. And we have to say, how can I make this work that's maybe not expected, okay? Okay, I have been guilty of this myself, being a startup that started in 2008. A lot of businesses with very little money or no money, we have shoestring mentalities, right? Our budgets are small and we think small. Well, that's obviously a problem. I mean, yes, as far as we don't want to just blow money we don't have, right? So financially, you want to be financially fiscal financial person or conservative, but you can't think small in the sense of what you're going to do or how you're going to build something. I mean, maybe you have to do it in chunks, but the point is, often we get stuck in the weeds as far as the operations of things, or we get stuck in the shoestring mentality. You know, we think we can only kind of climb up the shoestring, if you will. Well, that's not true, and we have to get out of that place. You have to operate out of a place of vision, okay? And so you have to have the vision and then try to get towards that with all your kind of tactical objectives that you make, if that makes sense. Okay, so one thing, I wasn't going to talk about it, but I will real quick. So in this industry, in tech in general, or just any related fields, a lot of times there's probably less women there. So Zach's like, oh, you should talk about women in tech, and I'm thinking, well, most of my audience probably won't be women anyways, so I don't, why should I talk about that? But my only point is, to me, it doesn't really matter. I don't really see why that's relevant. I mean, I went to some of the tech meetups in the area probably about 2 years ago. For the first 8 months, it was me and 15 guys. I mean, it's sort of like, so what, right? So to me, it's not relevant other than I'd like to see more women in our area come out to these events. I think there's lots of women in tech. I think they're just going home, and so are a lot of men. We go to work, and in this area, we sort of want to just go relax with, family or loved ones or whatever. So to me, I think it's our whole area's mentality in general, not just women that are missing. I think we like to enjoy our time off, actually. Okay, so a few things. We need to work smarter and we need to get more done. Like I said, so often entrepreneurs or startups, they're just spinning wheels too often. We need to get out there, we need to make it happen. There's always a way. Oops. Let me just see here. Okay, so a couple things before we actually get to that, so let me go back. So as far as money, are any of you trying to get funding or investment dollars? So nobody in this talk, okay. So real quick, just so in case you're curious, so Ziggity Zoom, we were started with 2 founders. In 2008, we did not take any outside money. We just put in some of our own money to start the company. And then in 2010, we took on a third partner that also gave an investment. So that's the only money that we've put in is as partners. And this year will be our first year that we won't put any money into the company to grow it. So our revenues still are not what I'd like them to be yet, but it'll be the first year that I can just use the money that's at least coming in to keep doing projects or growing it. So I'm hoping this year, or at least by next year, we'll at least be quite closer to the goal that I have for kind of our first revenue goal.
Was there a particular reason you didn't take funding at the beginning?
Well, a couple things, and we struggle with it back and forth. So I think first of all, if you don't have a scalable market, something that's a really large market, most people that are if you're gonna look at VCs or angel, they're not gonna even be interested, right? Or if you're not in, like I said, one of those new markets, or it's not really innovative or disruptive, they're not interested. That's in general. Obviously, there's always exceptions, right? Okay, now if you're just gonna go after family and friends type of money, then sure, that's definitely a viable option. It doesn't matter, what size you'll be. As far as us, one, we had enough money to get us off the ground and get everything going. And like I said, I'm very creative with deals, so we have a couple things in place that helped us do it for almost no money when we started. We spent quite a bit of money in year 2 and 3, but it was on paying someone for a year. I could have got away with not doing it, but we decided to invest the money in that. And then we also invested in this consultant that was very specific in what they did. And it won't pay for itself that year, but probably year 3 after us having spent the money will pay itself back. So it was kind of a long-term investment, if that makes sense. But the other reason, well, 2 reasons you don't take money. One is you can control your company. But 2, I think we were still trying to define what we were. I mean, we always knew what we were, but we've kind of tried different things and sort of we keep refocusing, even though it's always been very close to the core idea. So I think, it has to be crystal clear. And we weren't a service provider or a product. We're more of a content creator, right? And that's not all, and I'm not saying that we don't have products, but I'm not a B2B service, which is a much clearer deal for somebody to invest in. Does that make sense? So we may take money at some point, but the only reason I take money is if that person, actually, it's not even the money I want their context, right? If somebody has taken a site like ours in our industry and sold it, and they've been able to get everything in their ducks in a row and built it that way, that's what I'm interested in. The money doesn't matter to me, right? The only reason I take money is if I want to scale it from where we're at and get 20 things done quicker, or take my audience size from what it is to where I want to go. If I want to do it quicker because maybe there's an opportunity now to get bought or to get into something. So, you just have to kind of have criteria and decide what is it you want. You may say, I just want to work on this business for the next 10 years. Well, in your case, you probably don't need to grow quickly. But if you're trying to sell your company or grow it so that maybe you'll get acquired or whatever, then you need to consider those types of things, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's see. So here's what I see as far as startups, kind of some of the issues and things you should think about. They've got to stop spinning their wheels. You have to be more persistent. It kind of goes back to work ethic, right? If you aren't really busting your butt every day, 24/7 to get that business off the ground, it's probably not going to get off the ground, or at least it's not really going to be success because you're not all in. There's always a way. No money is not an excuse for anything. There's always someone that could help you or a way to be creative with your deals. You're negotiating. You're never going to have perfect conditions. You have to do it anyways, right? It's like if you're in the water and you have a brick tied to your leg, you're going to get out of the water and find a way. You have to swim, right? No matter what the circumstances are. And then what are your intentions? There's a lady named Patty, I don't remember if it's Dye or Dig, but she is a well-known writer, blogger. She's a speaker. And she has a series of books out. They're really about kind of the creativity and sort of empowering yourself. But the last 2 things she sort of has said, I kind of paraphrased, but what is your intention? Because you can't play to 2 intentions on a stage at the same time. You might say, oh, well, I want to be the best kids website, and I also want to have the top mobile app, right? No, in the end, I sort of have to pick, right? The number 1 vision and focus, and that's where my energy needs to go. Because I think the other thing is we all, as entrepreneurs, get excited, and a lot of us are creative people, we get too many ideas. The problem is, and I've done this myself, and many people I know out there have done this in this room, you start with one idea, and I think, well, these are all related, I can still tie the vision back, so then I start on 7 projects. Well, guess what? In the end, those 6 projects didn't make me any money, and I lost course of it a little bit. So really, strategically, you have to focus on the one core idea until it's successful, and then if it makes sense and the opportunity's right, you can branch out. And then the other thing that Patty said is we spend too much energy being clever, right? But our ordinary is actually our most potent place to be, because our ordinary is extraordinary. And by that, what we're talking about is when you go to your core, what is your, whether you want to say what are you meant to do, what's your real genius. We all have those talents. You do have to go to those strengths. Because I'm never going to be great at certain things, and you're probably never going to be great at certain things, but go, focus on what you are great with and surround yourself with people that are good at all the other stuff. And that's how we find success. And just as far as books and things like that I recommend, they're not new by any respect, but The E-Myth Revisited. If you haven't read that, it was from the 80s, but he's revised it, but it really speaks to you if you're considering starting a business. Will make sure you really get what it is to be an entrepreneur and that you're prepared to do all the things that go with it. And he has lots of stories in there, but like a baker, just because you're a great baker doesn't mean you're going to be great at running a business. And I don't mention that book to discourage you. I mention that book to say I think it puts you in a really great mindset for considering starting a business.
What's the name of it again?
The E-Myth Revisited. And you can borrow it if you want. But And then another one that's not a new book, but Jack Canfield, The Chicken Soup for the Soul Guy, did Success Principles. And it's actually a really good book. It has really tangible data and really good statistics about sort of how people made things happen. You know what I mean? And let's see. So I might have a couple other thoughts, but what about questions? What would you guys like to find out from either my mentoring side or business, different industries?
I was going to ask, so a lot of your points are very consistent with the Lean Startup, the book I'm sure you're familiar with. Are there any points in that book that you disagree with or that you didn't find true?
I have skimmed through that book, but not recently. I'm trying to think. Gosh, and I've read articles as well that he's written. Let me think about that. Obviously, I think anybody in startups has sort of your own take, but I'm sure some of them are similar, some of them are different. I would say a lot of it's true in the sense of I've spent money on things in hindsight that I wish I hadn't, and I think most new businesses have done that, or on consulting, and don't get me wrong, it depends on what it's for. Like, we only paid somebody that was very specific in the entertainment realm, which I have no contacts, not very little in that area. And so in some cases it makes sense as long as you have the money to put towards it, and it's, in the long term it'll pay for itself. So sometimes I think in the Lean Startup they say, don't spend any money, you just do everything, don't get everything free. But I would disagree with that a little bit. I'd say yes, do it as lean as you can, but in some cases you have to calculate it out for more years. Just like your computer depreciates over years, sometimes an investment you put in today might take 4 years to pay itself off. But you have to decide as a company, one, if you can put that money in, and two, if you think it's going to be worth it. But it's still a gamble, right? And the other thing I would say is, your team is so important, and I've worked, like I said, all different. Sometimes we can't hire people, right, to be part of our company when we're lean. And so you have to, of course you sign agreements and stuff, but you have to trust them. And sometimes, even if you think you define exactly what they're going to do and what you're going to do, it gets unclear. For instance, we worked on one project. The developer, who's just to develop, is trying to be the designer. He doesn't have a background in design, he kind of sucks at it. So guess what? I'm having to manage this, grown person, and be sensitive to, not pissing them off, but be clear and honest and upfront. And so a lot of times, that can blow up on me. So I have to be ready for plan B, first of all. What am I gonna do? So the first thing is you have to control your property, your data. So using, in this case, using GitHub or some other place like a reservoir of your data, you have to, in other words, you have to be in control of it. Just because someone did it for you, whether it was a contractor, third party, or you just are dealing with this person, you have to have control of all of that. Because if that person becomes a disgruntled employee or team member or a friend, you have to be ready to shift gears and go find the next person to work on it for you, right? So in other words, put checks and balances in place. That's the other thing I'd say, that sometimes we can get burned because we trusted someone too much. And I'm a trusting person, but you see what I'm saying? Once you start to see the red flags, you need to act and make sure everything's in place. The other thing I think a lot of startups don't do is they don't have documentation, right? So what happens is, it's like in big companies as well, that person has all this data on ad management delivery or on business practices or whatever it is, and when they leave, all the data leaves with them. And we've all been taught, document, make manuals, but it really is important. And it's just like when you start a startup, you can't assume because you're best friends everything's going to work out. You really have to define the roles, the responsibilities. What are you going to do every week? What am I going to do? And actually, these gentlemen in the room are working together, and I know they know this very, very. And you're as
He doesn't do shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't document anything. So.
But as you grow, you're working on that, right? You're just now even defining your roles better, right? I think.
Yeah.
So my point
really
is you do have to grow into it, but you also have to grow into it before there's a problem, if that makes sense. Does that sort of answer it?
It does, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
Let's say you survived a soft opening. What do you think would be the most important for a startup to start investing money into?
Can you define soft opening? You don't mean retail.
You've already had 3 customers, and you've worked out all the kinks for the purchase process, and they're happy with the product overall. Do you think that maybe advertising or bringing on more sales material?
Got it. So I think what you're saying is after you have some viable product and some very early customers, how do you get traction? Is that what you're asking?
Traction, or in your opinion, what would be most important, like to, I guess to get traction?
I mean, if we're talking about more of a website, I mean, it kind of depends, but so I'll give an example, but you could apply it, I guess, more broadly than I'm going to tell you. I mean, I think one, you have to, so let's just stick with the website example. If you did the site right, you're going to obviously have information about the product or the service that you provide in ways that, one, when they come to your site, it's clear, right, your messages, but then obviously can get found through search because you did a good job, right, of identifying the content for search. So I think the point is your funnel to get those people, no matter where you are putting the data, whether it's out front of the building, or in other restaurants, or if it's online. You have to kind of make your funnel broader, right? In other words, here's collecting all the customers and then get them to whatever it is, buying the product or coming to the website. So I guess it would be working on that, right? So if you just launched a product, likely you probably aren't found yet in search or in other, you're not getting referring links from anybody. So your next steps, I would guess, would be, especially if you have no money, right, to advertise, you're going to go and try to really maximize all of those things.
Link building.
Just everything. And well, I would explain it like this. So Chick-fil-A, they actually have a slide, but I deleted it of theirs. They dominate billboards. Okay, and this is why. They're very strategic with their marketing plans, but they realized now they've had TV and stuff, but in general during the year they don't. It's just billboards. The reason they're in billboards is because years ago they couldn't afford TV, right? They couldn't afford to dominate TV, so they made a strategic decision to dominate billboards because they could afford to dominate the billboards, but they cannot afford to dominate TV. Now, in more recent years, they've sponsored like football, the whatever bowl is theirs, and then they'll do TV around events like that, but in general, they're still not on the TV all the time. So it's same with you, right? No matter what industry you're in, you have to find a place or a way to dominate something. It could be if you're at ODU right here and you have a restaurant, you need to, every student that comes by should be hearing about your restaurant, cross-promote with your partners, other businesses. Do you see what I'm saying? So whether you do it online or whether you do that here, you have to get the word out. And it normally doesn't take any money. To get our traffic, I've never spent $1 on advertising. Not even one.
I've worked in the media and in libraries. Can you talk about how you guys started? I mean, this is a really tough market that you're working in.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more when you said media or library.
I was a journalist, and sorry?
Well, did you mean you worked in like an actual library or?
I am a librarian
Okay.
now, yeah.
So from your perspective though, are you just saying like when you start a site, or are you saying just
getting into content creation geared at children?
Absolutely. So a couple things. One, when we launched, it probably took us at least 8 months before the site went live. So the site went live in May of 2008. We started on it in the fall before that, putting content together. I could be wrong, but I think Google has like 40,000 like content, or what do they call it? Not pages. I forget what it's called. Like for our site. Gosh, I remember. Anyways, we have over 12,000 pages of content. Maybe it's like at 40. I don't remember. I mean, it's that much. I have no idea anymore. But I mean, because that's years work now. But and when we first started, we did all the content ourselves. So for 8 months, literally, besides building out the site and the functionality, because it was a custom site at that time, we literally started just saying, like, what are we going to focus on? What's our core content, right? And then we just started, my partner and I, just two of us, wrote that content. I mean, we did a lot of content. I mean, I've rolled out related blogs to Ziggity Zoom in 2 weeks, and literally I probably did 300 articles in the 2 weeks just to get the site up, right, to have content. So I think that you have to, one, know what your audience, who do you want to talk to, right, or who do you want to write to or do content for, and then you just come up with a strategic plan. So one, in your case, you could start writing about, like if you focus on children's books and you know a lot about it, start writing your own blog, but then also, or maybe you're going to write books, start getting on as a guest blogger onto other sites, right? Because over time, one, you're going to get known in your industry, and then two, you're going to get links from those sites back to your site. So that's the first thing. No matter if you're a blogger, you're an expert, a professional, you're going to want to do that, right, for exposure. The next thing is you just come up with an editorial calendar. I mean, we don't always stick to this, but if you come up with an editorial calendar, you know what the seasonality is of everything, and then you can, so like, this isn't related to children's books, but if you write about taxes, well, you know it needs to probably hit between December and March because you need it to be populated in a search before April. So do you see what I'm saying? You need to plan ahead of time. I mean, then you start going to conferences or you try to get contacts with people in your same industry. So like we've had content on tons of sites, but like parenting, parents.com, lots of content. And so, but it was because they saw us on another site, on Etsy's blog, and then they called us, and then we sort of worked with them. But on LinkedIn nowadays, you can connect with almost anybody as long as you are smart and strategic about it, right? Just don't spam people. But I mean, if you're in the children's industry, people will not often connect with you when you're intelligent in what you say to them, or you're in the same group as them, or you have something to share, with them. Does that sort of help?
Mhm,
But that's
yeah.
how we started out. Is we just sort of had a vision for what we wanted, and we started knocking out. Okay, my partner's going to handle the crafts and the this and that, and then I'm going to handle this area, and we sort of just started creating content basically. And we actually quickly got on the American Library Association's list of kids sites. So yeah. Other people? Anybody?
I asked this of some of the other presenters, what was your biggest challenge throughout this process, would you say?
Starting a business?
Yeah, from 2008.
Oh yeah, so a couple things. Well, one is, and I definitely share this when I talk to people, is I wish I had sooner started offering products. Like, in other words, making money off of revenue streams that were product-based or service-based. But for the first 2 years, I was really, in my mind, I had this metric of I need to get to be this big of a website before I can get any money. I literally was like, that was my goal, right? Was reaching the number of users per month. I mean, that was only my first goal. I still have much bigger goals for the site. I'd like to be at, my next goal would be 1 million users a month, and then I'd like to be at least to 5 million users per month. But the point is, my first goal was like, we have to get to 100,000 users a month. But I was so focused on that I didn't spend enough time on building the revenues, whether it was ad revenue or products, like selling workbooks because we have all this content and all these other things. We do that now, we have lots of revenue streams, but it took us a long time. And some of the advice I gave you today, it took me a while to get, because we're small, there's really only our team's bigger than 2, but 2 of us are only 2 working on it on a daily basis, right? I mean, the other people are, when I do the development, that's getting done, and then our third partner is more there for strategic stuff, or when we're working on something specific, like a game coming out, so that kind of stuff, but not on a daily basis. So really, 2 of us are doing all the hard work. So, I mean, really, it's because we don't have enough resources, but that's one of the drawbacks of growing small, right? Is you either go small and spend time on the right things only, or you have to spread yourself out. If I had taken money, I could have grown much quicker, and I could have a whole team of people. But the other thing is, we've had contributors on the site before, and we've had an advisory board of child experts, from health, fitness, psychologists. But the point is, we do get content from some other people. We still create 90% of our own content, but about 10% is from other contributors or editors. And we will be growing that number this year. But we had some technology issues where we weren't featuring them well enough, and we're getting that resolved now. Because before they would give us content, but we didn't feature them in a big enough way. So we're working to get that fixed, and we should have later this year, hopefully, 50 or 100 contributors by the end of the year then. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I've heard the common theme amongst others is the challenge of qualified developers or keeping them sort of.
I mean, we've actually worked with the same person since 2007. So, I mean, there's in general, he's phenomenal, but because I don't have him on as an employee per se, I mean, he has a good deal with us. I mean, he has a contract, but I have worked on other projects with developers, and of course this was the industry I was in before I started my own company, so I don't disagree. I think what I said about people and talent, right? You have to find the best at what you need that's interested in your idea. So no, you can't just take any developer, and often all of us in this industry make bad choices. Because a lot of people are going to lose, they're going to burn out, they're not going to want to work on your project anymore because it's not interesting anymore, or you don't have enough money to keep paying them at that level. So yeah, I would say developers is hard. I mean, it can be hard, yes, but also what I find is you need to start asking other people that have worked with developers in the area for recommendations. You should probably ask 5 people. So if those 5 people didn't tell you the same information off that person, then just because someone tells you they're a developer, often I wouldn't work with them.
You're no different than anyone else.
No,
Sales,
right.
marketing.
That's my
Unless it's
point.
me,
You have to have
you
good
should
people.
work with me.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
It's me.
But I'm thinking you can get 5 people to give you a good recommendation.
I read hard credit. Anyone needs to build.
Yeah. I think he's trustworthy, so. So other questions, but anybody else? I know a lot of you said you're still in more of a corporate or working for a company in the area. So what are you, and why are you Start Norfolk? Like, what are your challenges? Anybody?
Time.
Time to fit in your own project or time managing your current day job?
Time to fit it all in. To have the time to go prospecting, to make sure that you're finding the right people that are interested, willing to help.
But I mean, in your side venture or during the day? I wasn't sure what your.
Sometimes taking lunch breaks to work on the side venture.
But for you, in particular, you're talking about trying to work on your own project when you're not at work.
Right.
Is the time to shoot, okay. Yeah, and I agree with that, but I will say, I do recommend, and this goes back to lean startups, two things. One, you should start the idea and start working on it while you still have a job, or you have income that you've saved. And then two, often I hear some people say, oh, I have to fundraise, I have to raise money, I'm running out of money. But that's something that can take months and months or a year, or more than a year. And they might not even like your idea and they're gonna tell you no, because maybe really isn't a fundable idea. Why, if you're a developer especially, or a designer, why aren't you taking on side jobs to pay to fund your business? I mean, last year even, when I did consulting work, I just put it right back into Ziggity Zoom. I mean, well, that's what I had to do at the time, right? So I did it. This year, that money's now going in my pocket, so I'm happy for that. But do you see what I'm saying? You have to do what you have to do. And some people say, that gets you off course. Really? Well, that's a lot less time spent on a project than it is going and fundraising and getting this money. I will guarantee you that. Because that can be a full-time job for months. So I don't get it. You go and do side projects. I mean, you don't have to take a lot of them on, take enough to pay your bills for the business, right? So to me, it's a no-brainer. That's just what you do. And some of the people, like 39 Signals, is that what it is? Like, they've done projects for people before, right? I mean, they do their own stuff, but that's what you do if you have to. Yeah.
And constantly question if what you're doing at this moment is the best thing you can do for the business.
And often it's not.
Yeah, because
I'm guilty of it too. I mean,
we're still starting up, and I can already identify a dozen things that I thought were really important at the time, and then after we got it done, I thought that didn't matter at all.
Yeah, and I will say that is one of the hardest parts about running a business if you haven't run your own. Because I've worked at corporate America as well, and I loved it, and I had a great team of people. But you forget that when you do it on your own, you don't have all these resources and all these great people to go talk to, and all these connections already. So you get caught in the weeds a lot, and you do have to do the grunt work, which is okay. But you have to be able to determine, when could I have let the grunt work go, and I would have had no negative consequences from it had I just spent time on the vision and building or getting the customers. Then I would have the money in my pocket to pay somebody for those little things. So every day you have to make strategic decisions about what, like you said, how much is it worth, and am I going to get new customers? Am I going to get revenue? And if it doesn't answer one of those questions and it's not broken, then it might be something that needs to get put on the side burner or back burner, I guess. Yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you guys for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for.
And if you have any questions, ask me afterwards.